everyone, Phil from Tech for Techs. Today we're looking at this from Tecware. It's the Nexus M. It's basically a micro ATX case which has no RGB lighting on it. It's pretty sturdy, it's got a glass side on it, and it's all for basically 35 quid. So yes, all this for 35 quid. There are other variations available in different colours like black, white, white, and so forth. And they do have the full-size version available if you've got a full-size motherboard. But as I said, this is for micro ATX boards or ITX boards, whichever you prefer. The recommended retail price, as I said, is 35 quid on this. If you are interested in purchasing, please click the links below and it'll basically give you the best prices which are available at the moment in your country. Okay, today we're looking at the Tecware Nexus M. This is the M version because it supports micro boards, also ITX boards, but it does not support full ATX boards because of the size. There is a full-size version of this case as well, which does have room to fit a full-size ATX board in it, but this one specifically does not. Let's just have a quick look at the box first of all. Not much to really see. You can see the case, but to be honest, you might as well not be there because you can't really see much information about the case. It just looks like a sort of a grey blob on the side of the case, and it gives you bits of information on there which include super speed USB 3.0 times 1, HD audio and USB 2.0 times 2. It's got bays 2 3.5 inch, 2 2.5 inch, 4 PCI Express expansion slots. Obviously that's for your micro boards. Full size boards normally take 7. The fans, it supports 3 front 120 mils. It includes 2. On the rear it supports 120, and again that's included. The top supports 2 120s which aren't included. So altogether it comes with 3 fans, 2 on the front, 1 on the back, but you can put 3 on the front, 1 on the back and 2 on the top if you want. Support and clearance for your GPU, so your graphics card, you got 340mm, so that should fit most graphics cards on the market for you. It says it's got 155mm max GPU cooler. That sounds a little bit strange. I'm presuming they mean CPU cooler, but again we'll double check on that one. It's got cable management support. It supports MATX and MITX boards. So again, only the smaller boards. Dimensions: 385 length, 185 width, and 400mm height. Okay, so here you have the case. You can roughly see there that the outside of this case is black. The inside is red, so it gives it that nice red and black contrast there, which is quite nice. They do other colour variations. They also do a black with a white inside, a white outside and a white inside, and a black outside and a black inside. And again, they've got the same colour variations in the full-size versions, with the exception they don't have this colour, the red one, in the full-size versions, or at least according to their website. Obviously that might differ depending on where you are. If you want to click the links below in the description, you'll be able to see what's available and the prices. But at the moment, the recommended retail price for this is £35. So that is pretty cheap for a machine that has actually got a glass side on it, and it looks pretty smart as well. Doesn't seem to be much ventilation on the front though from initial looks. There's no vents there because the glass is in the way. The only ventilation is here, so how much air that's going to suck in, I'm not 100% sure. There is a little bit of ventilation on the bottom as well. As we said, there is room on the top for 220mm fans or a 240mm radiator. They could, in reality, looking at the case, made that a little bit wider to support 140mm fans. The back again has got a fan pre-installed, 120. The ones on the front, you can just about see through the glass there, quite hard, but there's 220mm fans there. The front I/O panel, which we have here, you've got 2 USB 2s, so that's your standard USB 2, USB 3.0. You've also got headphone and microphone. You've got a power and a reset switch. This case does not come with standard with any form of RGB, so it's a smart looking case, but it doesn't have that RGB, which not everyone wants RGB. Some people hate it, some people love it. Well, that's really down to preference. But anyway, the glass itself is held on here with 4 screws, which hopefully will unscrew easily. Yeah, the standard thumb screws. And there's one just gone flying. With any glass, watch how you remove it. For obvious reasons, glass can be quite sharp. And it's nice to see that the glass is actually not 100% flush, but not far off flush with the case itself. So that's nice to see. To pull it off, there's no hinges or anything. So that's just held on by those 4 screws. So make sure you've got hold of it tightly when removing it, because the last thing you want is that falling off the floor onto the floor and smashing. The side panel glass does have 2 bits of plastic on there to keep it nice. I know some of you like that peel. It wants to come off. And then the same for the inside as well. So looking at the inside, it does have a black painted edge, the glass does, so it makes it look nice and neat around the edges so you don't see all the rivets and holes and stuff. So it just covers up the mess, which is good. And on the outside it looks more of a gloss, where the inside it's more of a rough matte looking colour. Before we go fully inside, let's have a look at the front panel. I'm guessing this just pulls off. Yeah, it does. Bit tight, but it's just clipped in by 6 connectors. The cabling is directly into the top and then goes through the side of the case through into the back side of the case by the looks of it. It does have a dust filter there, and as you can see you've got those 2 pre-installed black fans, and you've got room for 1 more. Again, dust filters will also again slow down airflow. So this case doesn't seem to be designed for high airflow like the other Tecware case we reviewed a week or 2 back, which was extremely high airflow. But this one, I'm guessing, is going to be designed for your low-end home PC or even a low-end gaming PC. Again, you have got that magnetic dust filter on top as well, and that can be removed. On the bottom, you have also got another magnetic filter. It's just clipped in basically, which they can be a bit of a pain to clean, because it means you've got to turn the machine upside down to basically clean it out, rather than them having a little like pulley system where it just pulls out or slides out and you can clean it off like you get on some cases. But this is quite common on a lot of cases these days, even some more expensive ones. But I must admit, like that pulley system, so you could just pull out the actual bottom filter just to clean it whenever you want it. Let's have a look at the other side. So let's open it up. So again, 2 thumb screws holding it on. Pretty straightforward. And then it just pulls off. There's no soundproofing or anything like that on that panel. On this side, I don't see much. We've got, yeah, the first cable I've come across is a fan cable. So that's coming from one or both of the fans. I'm guessing one of the fans, you've got an option for a 3-pin connector for the motherboard, or it can go through a Matx connector to power it. If you've got available connections on the board, make sure you plug it in the board, because otherwise it can sound really loud using Matx connections, because it makes the fan go 100% all the time. Otherwise, let's have a look what else we've got in here. You've got, again, another connection again for your Matx or a fan connection. You could potentially put those 2 together to save on cables if you wanted to. And they're a little bit squished, in all honesty. There you go. I'm not a fan of adapters like that, but there we go. So you can push them together like that. The other cabling is all black. It's nice to see an all black cabling in a case of this price range. And even the audio as well as a USB 2, the black all the way to the end, where, believe it or not, in some of their more expensive cases, we've seen multicoloured ending. And the same with other manufacturers, all the way from Cooler Master and even Thermaltake and, well, pretty much most manufacturers have these multicoloured cables on the end, which make it look a bit of a mess when you got them plugged into your board. So that's good, but the cables you've got your USB 3, you've got your front panel, which is pretty straightforward, USB 2 and audio there. They aren't labelled, the USB 2 and audio, oh they are, it's in really black writing, so sort of moulded on, so hard to see what it is, but they are there. So let's have a look at the inside of the case itself. In the bottom you have got an instruction manual, which we won't really worry about too much, but let's go back to the back first so you can see. So here you do have room here for your power supply. Your power supply goes in there, it's pretty straightforward, screws in. The big fan, which is usually 12 centimetre, would point downwards, so it would be sucking air in from the bottom and then pushing it out the back. Okay, also on the back you've got room for screwing in 2 solid state drives, or 2.5-inch drives should I say, because you can potentially put a laptop hard drive in here and here if you wished, which is pretty straightforward. There's plenty of cable tied in holes on here, so you've got basically tie downs for your cable ties. You've got plenty of holes to go through to push your cables through to the other side to plug in your GPU and whatever else you need to, all the way at the top as well. There's, I won't say it's got the most room there, in all honesty. It's quite thin, but it should be wide enough to put your cabling down if you run the cabling down these routes like that and down here. Again, it's going to be using this for more of a low-end, medium-end machine, so I'm guessing you won't be putting huge amounts of cabling back there anyway. Now the rear fan, again, I'll show you the cable through that, is the same as the front fans. Again, a 3-pin connection, or the Molex. Would be nice to have them all connected together some way, little controller or something like that, or even a 3-pin fan splitter, but I'm guessing that'd work for the Molex, so you could potentially connect all 3 up through a Molex and then 1 into the motherboard with a 3-pin, and that should power it, but it's a bit of a strange way of doing it. Let's have a look at the inside from the other angle. So let's have a look at where the hard drives go. So you can fit a hard drive in, really hard to tell, but you actually fit it under here. So you can screw it in under here, like that, as well as one on the bottom there. So the screw holes are on the bottom, so you'd screw through there into your hard drive and it's positioned there. Again, that would be a hard drive, not a solid state drive in that one's case. And then under here you could put a hard drive or a solid state drive, so potentially 3 solid state drives or 2 hard drives and 2 solid state drives, depending on which way round you want to do it. It's a bit of a strange one not to be using this area like having a tray system. I suppose it's saving money by just screwing it directly into the casing or whatever, so it's an interesting way of doing it. Plus it gives you plenty of room for cabling. You haven't got a big wall here where all your cables have got to push out everywhere. So that's going to be quite neat. So going from the other side, you have got the shroud here, so that covers up your power supply, gives you a nice opening there so you can see what the power supply is, which is a positive and negative. If you've got a decent power supply, people can see your decent power supply, but if you've got a really rubbish power supply, unbranded one, or in some cases where the manufacturers stick the sticker on upside down, it's going to be here for everyone to see. So I've always said this, it'd be nice when they do have these cutouts to have some sort of piece of plastic or piece of rubber you can push over that to disguise it, and maybe even have Tecware's logo on there or something like that, so it makes it look a little bit neater. So you've got 2 options, show it or hide it. So on top of the shroud you've got lots of holes through there, so if you do have a LED lit up power supply it will shine through there somewhat. And you've also got the holes where you would screw in a hard drive or SSD to the underside of the shroud if you wanted. The shroud is not one piece with the rest of the case, but it is riveted on, so you won't be removing that unless you really get a Dremel or something at it, and I wouldn't advise that because it's going to probably make the case very unstable if you do. And while we're talking about the case and Dremeling and stuff like that, how sturdy is the case? I wouldn't say it's the most sturdy case I've come across, but it's pretty good for its price range, to be honest. Usually price range like this is usually flimsy and you can near enough fold the thing in half, where this is quite sturdy. I don't see it buckling or anything like that. You'd have to put a lot of pressure on it to dent the casing, which is also a good thing. Again, on the inside you do have their fans, as we said. They are just labelled as Tecware. They do not have any model numbers or anything on them. So it just says Tecware, and that is it. Otherwise, that's pretty much for the inside. They do come with screws. I know it's a long way to ask for screws, but it would have been nice to have maybe some red screws or something rather than black screws, but that's just me for when you plug the screw in the hard drives in there, rather than looking like lots of little black dots there where you've screwed in the hard drive underneath. But again, how many people will actually use that functionality? It's probably slim these days, with most people usually needing or using 1 or 2 solid state drives more so. Otherwise, you've got a pretty nice case, does everything you want. I can't see any problems with this. It's quite sturdy, as I said, and for 35 quid, I can't really complain. I'm going to do a quick build in here, see what it looks like. Nothing too fancy because we want the case to basically shine rather than the components, and also see what the airflow is like. And I think that's going to be the biggest issue with this case. If you are putting a lot of hot stuff in here, you're going to struggle with the airflow. But saying that, this is more designed for your lower end systems than a top end system by the looks of the case and for its price point. Okay, so before we show you the whole machine, what it looks like and everything like that, once it's all set up, we're just going to check the airflow. The only real intake on this is down this side here. There's a little bit at the bottom, but it's mostly down here, which is concerning me a little bit. Is the air actually going to go through there? Because it's basically the air is going to go through this, then the dust panel, what's behind it, and then through the fans. And there's 2 fans in there. Obviously you can always add another one. But what we're going to do is a very sophisticated smoke test. Well, maybe not that sophisticated. But basically, we got smoke, and basically we hold it up to the case and see if it gets sucked in. And actually, surprisingly, that is sucking in quite a bit of air. A lot more than I expected. Bear in mind, we do have the fans on full whack at the moment, so that's going to be sucking in the most as possible. But it is actually sucking air through the side. It's not always as easy to see on the camera, but it's definitely sucking it in there. A lot of it's going up the side, don't get me wrong, but more than I expected is getting sucked straight through those side vents, which is good. Towards the bottom, it is getting sucked under. A lot's going up as well, but there is a bit. Along the top, I've found it is sucking a bit in through the top. Obviously, if you add fans or a radiator up the top of the case, obviously that's going to be pushing the air out anyway. And obviously the back fan on the case, which is here, is blowing the air away pretty well, to be honest with you. So you haven't got anything to worry about there. So overall, cooling for the case, don't get them wrong, it's not going to be the best because it's got a closed front, but it is taking air in the side. A limited amount of air, but it is taken in, so that should be enough for a low end, maybe pushing medium end gaming machine, something like a GeForce 1650, maybe a 1660 pushing it, or 2060, with probably an i3 or an i5 processor or a Ryzen equivalent. Okay, the sound levels of the case, when the fans are on full, yeah, it's noisy. Well, it's going to be. When the fans are on quiet mode or auto mode, not as long as you're not gaming or anything, they're pretty quiet. Again, it's all down to what you've got inside, so sound tests on cases is always a hard one to do. If you want something what's got an airflow to it, it's going to be noisier than something what's a silent case which has got low airflow, and this is sort of that in between. It's not silent, it's not noisy, so it's I'd say an average computer sound level, so it's not too noisy, not too not. But again, it's all down to what you've got inside and what you're doing and how you've got things set up. So I'm not a big fan of testing sound levels on cases because there's that many variables. There's no way you can test them efficiently because some cases come with no fans, some come with 5. Obviously, one with no fans, if you're testing it out of the box, it's going to be silent. If you're testing it with obviously 5 fans, it's going to be noisy. So they're all different. There's no way of really testing one case to another 100%. So basics is, will it be noisy? You'll get a slight hum from it, but nothing too noisy. Unless obviously you're pushing it, you're rendering something, you're playing heavy games, then obviously your fans on your graphics cards are going to kick in, as well as the CPU fans going to speed up, as well as the other case fans. So as you can see, we've got the machine built up. So this is what the Nexus M looks like. Obviously, minus the glass panel, done that because obviously reflections in the studio from all the studio lights. But that's what it'll look like. Decided to just put some RGB memory in there just to give you a rough idea what it looks like when there is a little bit of lighting in there, just in case you decided to add some. But again, in this case, as standard, comes with no RGB. As we saw from the cooling, it does actually cool somewhat. It's not as good as obviously if it had a big mesh front on it and so forth, but considering it's got a dust filter on there and a small gap, it does suck in a good amount of air, which should be adequate for most low-end, medium-end systems. But I wouldn't start pushing the new GeForce 3090 in there with an i9 processor. It's just going to get too hot too quick. But again, most people who are spending that sort of money on components won't be spending 35 quid on a case. And again, as I said, it's £35. That's extremely cheap for an attractive looking, well built case. The only issue I had was when fitting the motherboard in, I had to take the rear fan out because it pushed against the motherboard and didn't allow me to slide it in properly. So I took the fan out, put it back in again afterwards, and it fit absolutely fine. So in conclusion, would I buy this case? Yeah, I would. I would actually recommend it quite a bit, to be honest. It's a nice case, it's a sturdy case, it's got pretty much most things anyone will need on it for, again, a low-end, medium-end build, even if it's just for home, office, or even gaming-wise. Just bear in mind what I've said about the airflow, so I wouldn't recommend going to high-end gaming, so probably limit it to something like a 1660 graphics card and probably an i3, i5 processor, something what doesn't get overly too hot.